Right, JDOS, the countdown's on now. Welcome to the ordinary council meeting of Dubbo Regional Council. I advise that this meeting is being streamed live to the internet. All those present should refrain from making any defamatory statements, and upon joining these online meetings, you accept the condition that your image may be recorded and streamed to the internet, as well as being retained in the archive of the recorded council meetings and standing committee meetings. I now open the December 2024 ordinary council meeting, the time being 5:30 p.m. Prayer by Councillor Butler, please.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for bringing us here today. Lord, we want to give you glory and honour for all that you've done, your providence and your great wisdom. We ask that you would provide us with wisdom today and bless us with unity. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. The acknowledgement of country, Councillor Ryan, please.
I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet here tonight, being the Wiradjuri people. I'd like to pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to pay respects to everyone that's here with us tonight. No matter what your nationality is, we all come together and we sit as one to go forward in our lifetimes.
Thank you. Item CCL 24/327, leave of absence. I've received apologies from Councillors Wells and Richardson. Can I please have someone move that Councillors Wells and Richardson's requests for a leave of absence be approved? Moved by Councillor Toynton, seconded by Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Toynton, any debate? There being none, I'll now put that motion. Electronic voting is open. Councillors, please cast your votes. I'll now close the voting. Carried unanimously. Item CCL 24/328 is conflicts of interest. Do any councillors have any conflicts they wish to declare? There being none, we'll now move to item CCL 24/329, public forum. I'll now run through the rules of public forum. Speakers will have 5 minutes. When you come forward to speak, please state your name and the item you are speaking on. When you have 30 seconds remaining of your allotted 5 minutes, you'll hear a bell. At 5 minutes, you'll hear the bell multiple times. The microphone will be turned off and your speaking time will conclude. Registered speakers will be asked to speak first, followed by members of the gallery who also wish to speak if time allows. Gallery members should refrain from making any disruptive behaviour, including clapping or jeering. I'll now call on the following registered speakers. First of all, we've got Mr. James Eddy, please.
My name is James Eddy, and I will be speaking about difficulties of community groups in operating with the regional theatre. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for allowing me to speak in this forum. My name is James Eddy, and I stand before you as a concerned member of the community. Concerned that a vital resource, the regional theatre, a resource that was built for the community, has become increasingly prohibitive for key community groups to access. I know some of the people from the original committee that designed the building and oversaw the construction of this fantastic resource, and I know that its intention was to support local creative talent in Dubbo, to provide a premier venue for visiting professional shows and to inspire and serve as a springboard for emerging talent in this region. Since its opening in 2010, I've had the privilege of watching my own children in a packed house appear on its fantastic stage many times in school concerts and with the Dubbo Drama Club. And I am enormously proud to have performed before sellout crowds, with audience members travelling from far and wide just to see Dubbo Theatre Company productions. Mr. Mayor, councillors, they bring their money and they spend it among our businesses throughout Dubbo and Wellington. I recall that the building of the theatre back in 2009 came with enormous scepticism from large groups within the community. You may recall that it was purported to be, even by some prominent members of the community, a huge white elephant, an overindulgence that would never get the support to justify the expense. I feel that the Dubbo region over 15 years now has put a notion of that colossal misjudgment completely to bed. The DRTCC is an enviable shining light in regional New South Wales. I give credit to Linda Christoph and her evolving team for their work over that time, for their hard labour, tackling the challenges that come with the collaboration and problem solving required to achieve the excellent status that our theatre now holds. However, I stand before you to voice my concern that the DRTCC is becoming increasingly prohibitive for community groups to access, and to request some consideration for this leading into the next budget for 2025. Higher rates are what they are, and it's acknowledged that this is a premier resource. While a review of it would be appreciated, it's also the frequent hidden costs, the surprising extras due to inefficiencies and arguably unfair billing that brush recklessly close to being extortive. Higher rates for equipment on paper are generally reasonable, but whenever a projector is used for only an hour at midday and then again for an hour in an evening show, is it reasonable to be also billed for the 8 hours of zero use in between? This has happened. Community groups are understandably required to hire tech staff from the theatre, but is it reasonable for a job that would take half an hour for a reasonably experienced sound and light technician to then invoice hires for 2.5 hours or so while the technician fiddles away until they work it all out, or experiments with their own ideas of what they would like to do?
Just pull up there for a minute, please.
Yeah.
We've got the
Just under the
CEO.
code of meeting practice, we're crossing a line with critiquing staff, and that's not allowed in a council meeting. You're
Okay.
critiquing individual staff, and that's not allowed under the code of meeting practice.
Okay.
Thank you. Please continue along those lines.
All right. Okay. Well, is it? I don't think this is critiquing staff, but I think it's critiquing a process. Is it reasonable for the to bill the hirer for time when it is known that the technician has gone home for several hours after completing their job early on midday and returned to work later in the evening? I have listed another specific incident that has occurred that involves a technician that has made decisions for themselves. I won't read that out though. These incidents continue to happen. They're not in isolation. They're real stories from a diverse set of community groups, and they are common stories. Surprising cost blowouts within the final invoice are a frequent issue that community groups can scarcely afford. Dubbo is a nursery for high-level talent, and the list of locals who have moved on from into professional circles and teaching positions grows every year. But producers from these studios have been told recently that even though our productions regularly fill the auditorium and draw audiences of friends and relatives from well outside the community, that management would still prefer to bring in visiting shows as a priority, to the exclusion of local productions. Ladies and gentlemen, the logic is difficult to fathom, particularly considering that the fight that brought this excellent resource to fruition decades ago. I urge you to please consider carefully and seek the Dubbo Regional Council's further support to ensure that our burgeoning local talent can access this venue without exclusion through inflated costs or misguided policy. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you dearly for your time.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any other speakers in the gallery that would like question Councillor Dickerson for
thank you.
Mr. Eddy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, I'll ask this through to Mr. Eddy and the groups there. Is this about just a charging? Would you prefer to see charging fees come down, or is this also about having resources with community groups that could actually undertake some of those jobs with the correct training, of course? Is it something that you would see that as being a valid outcome, or is it just about the higher fees being reduced?
At this stage, it is more than just about the higher fees. It's about the other costs that come with it that could be negotiated, that could be dealt with in another way. But these things appear on an invoice after a show for producers where they haven't been able to predict that they were going to be billed for things, and the surprise costs. So the question is are we able to manage a system where community groups can afford this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other people in the public gallery that would like to speak that aren't registered? No, thank you. We'll move on to item CCL 24/330, confirmation of minutes. The first item of business is the confirmation of the minutes of the proceedings of the ordinary council meeting held on 26 November 2024. Do I have someone move those? Councillor Ryan, seconded by Councillor Butler. Thank you. Are there any debate about the minutes, councillors? No, there being none, I'll open the voting. Please cast your votes on that motion. I'll now close the voting. Minutes adopted unanimously. Item CCL 24/331 is the presentation from the Sister City Exchange students. The Council will now receive a presentation from the Sister City Exchange students, Casey Ireland and Jake Spinks, and chaperone Mr. Kim Ireland will also give a short presentation. Fantastic to see you here this evening. Please step up to the microphone and just press the button and it will turn on. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, Mr. Mayor, councillors, and other visitors in attendance. My name's Kim Ireland. As mentioned, I was one of the co-chaperones for the Dubbo to Minakamo Sister City Exchange Program. What a wonderful experience. 10 students and 2 chaperones, and I think our heads are all still spinning. Anyway, I'll present this brief report and try not to ramble too much. I'm really honoured to present this report about the recent exchange visit. It was a truly enriching experience. It really deepened our understanding of Japanese culture, and I believe it really strengthened the bonds between the two communities. Our journey began with 3 exciting days in Tokyo, where we explored some of the city's most iconic landmarks and attractions. We visited the Emperor's Palace, Tokyo Tower, and of course Disneyland. That was a big hit with the kids. Tokyo, obviously the world's most populated city, and it was a pretty thrilling mix of sights and sounds and energy. However, I must admit, has also shared part of my least enjoyable experience in navigating the busy train systems in Japan. That was quite an adventure in itself, but nonetheless still an experience. I think the only casualty of the railway system in Japan was one of the kids' neck pillows got left behind on a travelator so we could make our train on time. So anyway, from the chaotic trains of Tokyo, we travelled to Minakamo. The contrast could not have been more profound. The picturesque and scenic countryside was a refreshing change of pace. Minakamo welcomed us with its lush landscapes, rice fields right next to the roads, which was pretty amazing. The tranquil atmosphere and the warm hospitality was in abound. Our hosts were incredibly generous, ensuring our experience was rich in cultural depth, from savouring traditional Japanese foods like ramen and sushi to exploring old castle towns and local markets. We were immersed in the essence of Minakamo. One unique activity was making our own paper, surprisingly quick and enjoyable process. I was also fortunate enough to take in some other experiences. One visit to a sake brewery was really fascinating. Another special experience was a visit to a local master swordsmith. Quite an experience for me, as I've always loved martial arts and Japanese weaponry. It was quite incredible. For me personally, an absolute highlight of the trip was our training in Kendo and Aikido, 2 other Japanese martial arts. They provided opportunity to try some new experiences. And after having trained martial arts myself for over 40 years, it was a real area of interest for me personally, a dream come true. We also observed striking differences between the Australian and Japanese schools. Japanese students are so highly disciplined, balancing rigorous academic schedules and then engaging in hours of extracurricular activities like traditional sports like kendo, judo, and traditional Japanese archery. I really believe that we could take some lessons from the Japanese culture when it comes to respect, ownership and responsibility across the education system. We learned the students have such a deep respect for and interaction with nature, as evidenced by the extensive farming plots and greenhouses on the school sites where they farm and produce crops, plants and flowers and sell on the school site in shops. Agriculture plays such a central role in not only Minakamo's identity, but Japan as a whole, and with its people demonstrating a close connection to the land and sustainable way of life. On a personal note, one of my favourite memories of the experience was sitting with Yuya Yamaguchi-san, the father of our host family, and over a glass of sake after his busy long days, we would discuss the differences in our daily lives from work hours and family traditions and society and societal expectations and pressures. We both enjoyed those conversations and found them really enlightening. It's quite amazing. And we still speak weekly, which is amazing. Whilst I enjoyed visiting Tokyo, I was especially captivated by the old city of Gujo, Oniyama Castle, and walking in the footsteps of the samurai, exploring the old castle town markets and engaging with the locals. In amongst all these wonderful experiences, my most cherished memories are the time spent with the host families, sharing their lives and forming connections that I feel will last a lifetime. As I said, we speak at least weekly with our host family, and so does Casey with the kids as well, so that's amazing. We're lucky enough to have made some great friendships, and I hope the other host students and families have as well. We are profoundly grateful to our host family, the Yamaguchis, and to all the families who open their homes to us. A special mention must go to the Minakamo International Exchange Program and to Yumi Takeda, and whose extraordinary efforts ensured every detail of our trip exceeded our expectations. Special thanks also to Daisy Wang and all the Dubbo City Council staff who work behind the scenes to make it such an amazing event for everyone. I'd like to congratulate the students as well. They did such a wonderful job of representing Dubbo, the council, and their families. They did everyone proud. We should all be very proud of the amazing group of young people that we sent over to Japan. Special thanks to Carla Roots, our amazing co-chaperone. She did an amazing job, cool under pressure in the Japanese train stations in particular. And this was truly an unforgettable experience. And we're deeply thankful for the opportunity from Dubbo City Council as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Sound like a great opportunity. Were there any other people to give reports? Yep, please hop up to the microphone.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Casey Island, and I had the opportunity to be a part of the 2024 Minakamo Sister City Exchange Program. I would like to start off by sincerely thanking Daisy Wang and Yumi-san and everyone who had helped to organise this amazing opportunity. When I applied for this exchange, I stated in my application that I wished to be a part of this group, as I've always loved the Japanese culture, and I've always wanted to experience it firsthand. Not only was I lucky enough to be accepted, but my father was also accepted as one of the chaperones. My passion for the Japanese culture has been passed down through generations, primarily through martial arts. Growing up, I watched my family practice various forms of martial arts, and it instilled in me a deep respect for the discipline, philosophy, and traditions that came with it. We had the incredible opportunity to host and be hosted by wonderful families through the Sister City Exchange Program, and visit many beautiful traditional Japanese places. Our hosts, the Yamaguchi family, were so welcoming and friendly and put so much effort into making sure my dad and I could experience as much of the Japanese culture as possible. On our very first full day in Minakamo, the Yamaguchi family took us to experience kendo, which is a Japanese martial arts that uses bamboo swords. Coming from a background of mixed martial arts, my dad and I were so excited and had so much fun in participating in a descendant of kenjutsu, also known as a traditional Japanese swordsmanship. I loved experiencing Tokyo with its bustling streets, neon lights, and iconic tourist destinations such as Tokyo Tower, not to mention the very relaxing train rides on the Shinjuku line. I really enjoyed visiting Tokyo Disneyland. It was such a magical place with so many fun rides and iconic Disney characters. In fact, I enjoyed it so much I left my dad with my wheelchair and walked around for 12 hours on my broken foot. Though I loved seeing different parts of Tokyo, it was the beautiful scenery of Japan's countryside that made me love Japan even more. We visited a small town called Gujo City that is known for its beautiful scenery, historic sites, and serene rivers, and were taken on an enchanting tour of the town, learning about its history. The welcoming locals even taught us dances that are performed at the Gujo Odori, which is a traditional Bon dance festival. And as much as I loved the places we visited and all the amazing food we tried, the highlight of the trip was the people we met and the lifelong friendships that we made along the way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another presentation from Jake, is it? Yep, thank you.
Hello, my name's Jake Spinks, and my trip to Japan and everyone else's was suddenly unforgettable. I mean, initially upon our arrival, it was quite overwhelming. So many places to go, but so little time. It felt like we were in a whole new world. No one spoke our language, and the language barrier was definitely there. Attempting to communicate and navigate our way around the city was definitely a challenge. But, visiting Disneyland, Tokyo Tower, being able to see the city, much like Sydney, it was very busy. People were running around, suitcases in hands, on their way to work. It was definitely a different experience to Dubbo. But the transition from Tokyo to Minakamo was undeniably mesmerizing. I mean, being able to go from a big, bustling city to a small, peaceful town like Minakamo, it was truly inspiring because people there were so much more welcoming and they were so kind to us. And being able to meet our host family was like having a new family, essentially, because they were so kind and welcoming, and they would give you gifts and they made your time in Japan just mesmerizing. One of my highlights of the trip was definitely being able to have late night conversations with Shin, my host student, and his friends over takoyaki and other Japanese foods that they wanted me to try. Being able to make these friends was definitely a lifelong memory that I'll have. And being able to go back to Japan one day and meet them again is definitely one of my goals. Our time in Japanese school, it was definitely different to Australian schools. My height, of course, was quite a surprise. There was definitely a height difference, and being able to play basketball with quite the advantage was pretty nice. But the friends I made, over 80 I've counted, was just incredible. And I definitely left Japan with tears because it was just so enjoyable, and my time there was just incredible. I can't even put it into words. It was an amazing experience, and I'm very thankful to the council for selecting me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Were there any other people to give reports? No. Thank you so much for those reports. It's always great to hear back from people who have been over on the exchange, and it's such a success. Keep in touch with the people that you met over there. That's my tip on that. So thank you very much. The next item is item CCL 24/332, mayoral appointments and meetings. I move the information contained within the report be noted. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Chowdhury, thank you. Any debate, councillors? There was only, I'll just speak briefly then, there was only the matter last month. I took a item on notice, a question from Councillor Ivey relating to a meeting with Carolyn Sidoti, and I took that on notice because I couldn't recall in the moment. I did look it up, and there was an email came from the customer experience desk to myself, and it said about Ms. Sidoti just wants to speak with Mayor Josh Black to congratulate him on being the mayor. So that was that one, and the conversation went along those lines. I can report. Thank you. I had a lot of those. I will now open the voting on that. Councillors, please cast your votes electronically. I'll now close the voting. Carried unanimously. The next item is CCL 24/333, mayoral expenses for November 2024. I move that the information contained within the report be noted. Is there a seconder? Councillor Cowley, thank you. Any debate or questions, councillors? Councillor Wright.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Maybe not something you might be able to answer, Mr. Mayor, through you though. Professional development. There was no allocation for October, November. Yet I know you were in attendance to the LGA conference with myself and a couple of other councillors. Can you just explain professional development? Would that cost come under professional development, or is there another allocation for that for councillors as well as the mayor?
In the conferences one.
There is. It's my apologies.
I'll
Actually, 3 lines above. Yeah, thank you.
Throw to General Manager.
Yeah, just to
CEO.
confirm, so Council, we don't treat the LG New South Wales conference as training per se. You'll recall, councils from the onboarding recently held, we have to develop individual tailored programs for each councillor, so that's very discrete and separate. We factor that in, given it's the peak conference, and we have a long tradition of encouraging all councils to make themselves available should they so choose, so that it's captured in the conferences line. That's right.
No, thank you.
Any other debate? Councillors, there being none, I'll open the voting to put that motion. Please cast your votes. I'll now close the voting. Motion carried unanimously. Item CCL 24/334, Smart and Cool Places Report. Do I have a motion for that one? Someone to move that? Councillor Wright, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Chowdhury, thank you. Councillor Wright, do you wish to speak to that?
No, that's fine. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other debate, councillors? Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just make a comment. Like, it's really good to see, like, a council and Double Regional Council and Maitland has participated this pilot locations project, and good to see like a council doing this leadership role for this, because when we are crying for this weather change and like a tree canopies, so this report gonna like this matter gonna information gonna help us in future to form our city more environment friendly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Butler.
More of a comment, I think. I've just noticed here that there's fairly alarmist sort of preamble. I just wanted to take a little issue. According to ADAPT New South Wales, by 2090, the average temperature projected rise be from around 1.4 to 4.1 degrees. The satellite and balloon measurements over the last 2 decades have shown no change and no increase. So I do support the motion. I think it's a great idea to have these cool zones, but I'm not quite, how would you say, in agreement with the rationale. I don't think we need a climate change rationale in order to provide heat spaces and all the other stuff which is wonderfully recommended in here. So just wanted to be more of a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other debate, councillors? There being none, we'll go back to Councillor Wright for right of reply.
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, I'll put that motion, open the electronic voting. I'll close the electronic voting. Motion carried unanimously. Item CCL 24/335, Development Activity Statement. Councillors, do I have a motion on that? Councillor Wright to move that, seconded by Councillor Chowdhury. Thank you. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to that motion?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just yeah, great to see so much activity continue to roll through. I know that I was going to ask a quick question about a couple of pages in the report that I know a couple of my fellow councillors also wanted to query. There's a graph on page 48. It does show quite a substantial uplift in residential approvals between September and October. Just wondering, that number of 169 looks pretty substantial. There's another graph obviously on the following page which gives that bit of a running balance for 2024. It's similar sort of uptick. Is it an error, or is it a large number of approvals went through for that particular month of October?
It's through to the CEO.
To Mr. Jennings.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, definitely not an error. There was a development application for seniors housing at the Freemason site up on Cobra Street, which was approved in the period. It was 164 units and a village clubhouse. So, yeah, just more of a anomaly. We do have these large approvals come through from time to time, and they do affect the figures in that regard.
Thank you. Anything further?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ivey.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a follow-up question in relation to that information. What constitutes a separate residential development there? For instance, I presume if it's a motel with 50 rooms, that just counts as one building, but because it's aged care accommodation, are they strated units, or what actually, how do we decide to make them as individual, to list them individually rather than as a one entity comprising a number of parts?
To the CEO.
Mr. Jennings.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the way we account for our residential approvals, we do count single dwellings in a separate figure, and then the other figure there, which is the 169 other dwellings, it does include dual occupancy development, includes multi-dwelling housing development, service apartment development, seniors housing, also secondary dwellings, and yeah, anything there that's basically not considered to be the single dwelling. So it still gives us a snapshot of our approvals as well that are moving through, and really tries to show what other development types there that are moving through the approval system.
Anything further, councillors? Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to congratulate again Mr. Jennings and his team. In page 51, like it's still like a average assessment days are like you guys are doing best within these regional cities, because it's showing like in that paragraph, like in the table, like a 46 days. I think keep doing your hard work, keep doing your good work, make us proud. Thank you.
Anything further, councillors? Councillor Wright, right of reply.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, I will now put the motion. Electronic voting is now open. Please cast your votes. I'll now close the voting. Motion carried unanimously. Item CCL 24/336, Quarterly Report on Complaint Statistics under Council's Code of Conduct, Quarter 1. Do I have someone to move the motion there? Councillor Cowley, seconded by Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Cowley, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Any debate or questions, councillors? There being none, I'll now put that motion. The voting is open. Please cast your vote. I'll now close the voting. Motion carried unanimously. Item CCL 24/337, investment under section 625 of the Local Government Act, November 2024. Councillors, do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Chowdhury, seconded by Councillor Wright. Councillor Chowdhury, would you like to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further debate, councillors? There being none, I'll put the motion. Electronic voting is now open. Please cast your votes. I'll now close the voting. Carried unanimously. Item CCL 24/338, monthly reporting snapshot for councillors. Do I have someone to move that motion, councillors? Councillor Chowdhury, seconded by Councillor Wright. Councillor Chowdhury, would you like to speak to that motion?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further debate, councillors? There being none, I'll put that motion. Voting is open. Please cast your votes. I'll now close the voting. Carried unanimously. Item CCL 24/339, share to dignity. Councillor Cowley, would you like to move your notice of motion, please?
I would indeed, Mr. Mayor, that council staff work with Share the Dignity to find an appropriate space to house a vending machine for Share the Dignity and seek external funding for the $26,000, including GST cost, over 4 years for the vending machine and supplies.
Thank you. A seconder for that motion, councillors. Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Cowley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Most certainly I would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This little box of tampons here, which is carefree, which is a little bit of a misnomer, to be honest, will set you back about $6.50 at one of our well-known supermarkets. If your period lasts an average of 5 days, this box should get you through a month. So on average, that's going to set you back about $78 a year. Now, if you imagine being a mum of menstruation age and you have 2 teenage daughters, so now you're up to $19.50 a month, or $234 a year. Now imagine you have to buy pads as well. They're around $5 a throw. Same deal with quantity. So let's add another $15 a month, or $180 a year. Now we're up to $414 a year. Now add a couple of packets of Naprogesic, which is period pain reliever. Not always terribly effective. And that's an extra $360 a year. So all up, you're not getting any change out of $800 a year. And that's if everything is average and goes normally. Period underwear, which is specifically designed to stop leakage and odour, even if you get them on special, we're still talking about $15 a pair. So let's call that a luxury. Let's not include that. So, and those of us who've ever had a period know there's nothing luxurious about it. Now, I'm being a bit flippant, but I guarantee you there is absolutely nothing funny about the fact that so many women and girls in our community aren't able to afford these products, or worse, are not enough of these products to use them safely and hygienically. And while women are very resourceful when it comes to finding alternatives, which I won't go into, they simply shouldn't have to. Now, remember that menstruation isn't exactly a lifestyle choice, but having your periods means you might be forced into another choice. A choice between buying period products and going without other essentials, or vice versa. And in Australia and in our region in 2024, that's just not acceptable. On International Women's Day in 2021, Share the Dignity, which is a not-for-profit organisation that aims to address and ease what we now know as period poverty, launched the Period Pride Report in what they called the Bloody Big Survey. See what they did there? To collect evidence-based data with which to quantify the social, personal and financial impacts of menstruation on Australia. And there were some staggering results in terms of stigma and shame and sheer ignorance that still exists around periods. And that's a whole other discussion for a whole different forum than this. But for the purposes of this motion tonight, here's a couple of the findings. 64% of the respondents, and there were 190 odd thousand, so a good sample, reported struggling to afford period products, a number that increases dramatically in certain communities. For instance, this rockets up to 83% in Indigenous communities and 78% for those who have a disability or a chronic condition. 56% of respondents reported missing work because of their period. And for the number crunchers amongst us, that's a cost of $9.6 billion annually in lost productivity. Nearly half of Australian schoolgirls have at some point skipped school because of their periods. Now, these stats include all women and girls right here in our own patch. So what can we do about it? And I'm very glad you asked the question. At the recent New South Wales Local Government Association conference, the keynote speaker was Liz Ellis, who, apart from being an Australian sporting icon and an all-round cracking human being, is also an ambassador for Share the Dignity. And she sparked the interest of those of us who were listening when she talked about how councils can support the installation of vending machines that dispense free period products to those who need them. So these Dignity vending machines dispense a single pack, contains 6 tampons, 2 pads with wings, has a built-in display and is monitored remotely. So Orange has 2, Tamworth has 2, nothing here in Dubbo. We have a quote thanks to Councillor Dickerson, who approached Share the Dignity for the quote. The cost is over 4 years is $26,000. Concerns over vandalism are valid, and so we need to consider putting it into a public space that's accessible 24 hours a day. There should not be any cost to council if we go about this in the right way. This is a project that lends itself beautifully to the application of a little extra pressure on the corporate social responsibility nerve. So the idea would be to investigate avenues through which to secure external sponsorship. And off the top of my head, I'm thinking of the major supermarkets that sell these things to women, or to the manufacturers, or to any number of philanthropic organisations with which Dubbo Regional Council would be happy to partner to build a more inclusive and supportive community where no one is forgotten. So tonight I'm asking for your support to set the wheels in motion for a Share the Dignity vending machine in our fair city to help address period poverty. And on behalf of a community that cares about its most vulnerable, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Ryan.
Oh, look, not a debate, just I take my hat off to Councillor Cowley and everyone else involved in this one with the cost of living. You know, for families these days, it's crazy that we don't already have this. Working in the education system for a number of years now and doing attendance reports, I can state that those are not made up facts. They are actual factual things that happen. A lot of teenage girls miss school because of that exact reason. So I, for one, will fully support this, and I hope that everyone else does. Cheers.
Thank you. Councillor Dickerson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I often say when you go to a conference, if you come back with one good idea, it's been a successful conference. And we were at the last particular talk of the Local Government New South Wales Conference. Unfortunately, there are only 3 of us left, Councillor Wright, Councillor Cowley and myself. The rest of the councillors that were there in attendance had gone home. And Liz Ellis did come on and speak, and this idea seemed brilliant. And as we were sitting there talking at that particular conference, we said, surely we can find some space, which is exactly what Councillor Cowley is talking about here, and there are corporate sponsors out there. So as Councillor Cowley mentioned, I did end up speaking to Rochelle Courtney, the founder of Share the Dignity, and she talked about that $26,000 figure, which is over a 4-year time frame. So I'm very confident that if council can find some space, which I think there are many spaces we can find, then I'm very confident that council staff, or maybe even some councillors. Councillor Cowley's got some great contacts, for example, could find some corporate sponsor out there that over a 4-year time frame, $26,000 isn't a lot. And there is the potential, if a corporate sponsor wants to do this, they can actually have branding on that particular vending machine as well. So they do get some advertising value. Some corporates wouldn't want that. Some corporates would be just happy to contribute the money, but both options are there. So thank you, Councillor Cowley, for bringing this forward to council. It's one of those things that I think, one of those rare things where we can make a significant contribution to the community without it costing our budget any money at all, and something that I think we can make a difference in our community. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further debate? Back to Councillor Cowley for a right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Only to say thank you for your support, councillors. But my own preferred space, and obviously we will need to look into this, but would be the Macquarie Regional Library, which, as far as I can see, ticks all the boxes. Having spent quite a bit of time there, I know that it's used by arguably the widest cross-section of our community, and the diverse demographic that comes through those doors is extraordinary. Includes mothers groups, people from out of town, those with a disability, our Indigenous and multicultural communities, school and university students. There are clean and accessible toilet facilities. They offer privacy and discretion. Discretion is very important, particularly to some of our multicultural and Indigenous communities. The library is cool in summer, it's warm in winter, it's a safe space, it's staffed by some of the most magnificent people that we have working in council. I'm a bit of a fan. And I just think it's a safe and inclusive space for the Share the Dignity vending machine. So thank you very much for your support.
Thank you, councillors. I'll now put the motion. Electronic voting is open. I'll now close the voting. Motion carried unanimously. Item CCL 24/340, Local Purchasing Policy. Councillor Dickinson, would you like to move your notice of motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So moved as per the business papers.
Have we got a seconder? Councillor Chowdhury, thank you. Councillor Dickinson, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was way back on the 20th of December 2004 when I first brought the concept of a local purchasing policy to council. At the time, our local purchasing policy says that we should use local suppliers if possible, which didn't seem strong enough. So from that particular notice of motion way back almost or just under 20 years ago, then we developed a policy that gave local purchasers a nominal advantage, a nominal percentage advantage, and that seemed to work quite well. The amalgamation came along, and obviously policies got changed and modified after the amalgamation as the two councils were brought together. We still have a policy now that gives a nominal advantage to local suppliers, but I'm not convinced that all of our local businesses are aware of that. And I'm also not convinced that the actual definition of a local business is correct. We need to probably look at that because, again, we've gone to a wider area now with Dubbo Regional Council taking in Wellington and Dubbo. And one of the debating points for that might be, for example, is a local business defined as a business that employs people that are locally living, or does the ownership have to be someone who lives locally? Those sort of things need to be ratified and identified. But in general, it's a good time, I think, to have a look at our current policy, make sure it's doing the job, make sure that our local businesses are aware of the local policy and see how effective it has been, how many times it's been utilised, and make sure that we as a council are fully supportive with policy, not just with our staff, in making sure we're using local businesses wherever possible. So I'd like to see a review, which is exactly what this is asking for, a review of what's happened in the past, and then possibly identify some modifications that might be required as we go forward. It seems fairly obvious to me. We do support local businesses. This gives our staff some numerics or some numbers and some data to wrap around that to make sure we're all consistent in that support. That's all I need to say on that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Any further debate, councillors? Councillor Ivey.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'll support the motion. In speaking in support, though, I just would like to note that perhaps where the review of a local business is outlined as part of that review, that it also incorporate that issue of Wellington and Dubbo. I know I have occasionally received some feedback from Wellington businesses saying, oh, we are not given any and we're not given enough support to provide the council with services. Why don't we get some sort of preference? Now, I don't know whether that's justified. I don't know whether it's real, but just within the review, could that review of local businesses and the support that's provided just be aware of the need to take into account both Wellington and Dubbo in looking at that situation?
Any further debate, councillors? There being none, back to Councillor Dickerson. Right, a reply.
Only just briefly on what Councillor Ivey said there, and that's one of the things I think we can point out with this. There is a preference at the moment in our current policy, but maybe not all businesses are aware of that. And so this report hopefully will identify the usage of that and whether we should refine that a bit better. And I suppose to a certain point, get the information out there to our local businesses as well to make sure they are aware of it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll now put the motion. Electronic voting is now open. Please cast your ballots. I'll now close the voting. Motion carried unanimously. Item CCL 24/341, Council Buildings. Councillor Chowdhury, would you like to move your notice of motion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a slightly different than business paper, so I just read that the CEO provide a report of council listing all underutilized building and parcel of serviced commercial land owned by council, including a detailed overview of potential or planned future use.
Thank you. A seconder? Councillor Dickerson, thank you. Councillor Chowdhury, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's pretty straightforward because I would like to see how council like a parcel of land and buildings been using and what the best uses we can do, because there are a lot of community groups always outcry for looking for a location to move in or get bit support from the council. So I'm not saying is this overview will let them to get in, but the thing is overview will give us in future direction how the best we can use our premises and the parcel of commercial land. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further debate, councillors? There being none, I'll now put that motion. Electronic voting is now open. Please cast your ballots. I'll now close the voting. Motion carried unanimously. The next item is item CCL 24/342, Proposed Restricted Truck Zone, Sheraton Road. Do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Chowdhury, seconded by Councillor Toynton. Thank you. Councillor Chowdhury, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think council done a fantastic job through this report and a proposed restriction, because I received fair few phone calls or complaint from the local resident. They've been a bit scared of these big trucks always during the school time passing that road. But with that with that restriction will give them a bit soothed, make them a bit safely drop their kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further debate, councillors? Councillor Dickerson.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor, I suppose a speculative question. We had the discussion last week about potentially Sports World being utilised for a sports hub. Now, we're not sure on the time frame of that, obviously, but this restriction on vehicles, heavy vehicles going around there during school zones, the sports hub may be used during school zones, may be used during after school zones. I wonder if there'll be any need to extend these times for those heavy vehicles if the sports hub goes ahead at Sports World to keep those heavy vehicles off the road during those times. So a question, if you may, Mr. Mayor.
To the CEO.
Throw to Mr. Ryan. Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. The school zones are set up primarily for school use, so that's why this report's gone through, following on from a previous council resolution. Looking at restrictions of times outside of schools not related to schools would certainly be something that would be unique, and certainly this is about looking after the potential pedestrian and truck conflicts that we have at those school drop-off and pick-up times. So this is primarily to do with the schools and hasn't considered future uses where there may be other conflicts, but yeah, just like to point out that this is related purely to the schools.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. And the CEO?
Yeah, and just to add, and it was discussed at the extraordinary, that there are existing credits. So there is parking and there is existing use already. So even though there may be a revamped and revitalised use and indoor sporting facility, there's existing traffic there anyway. That we have not had that feedback of conflict to date as well. It is largely about that pulse of concentration at school drop-offs and pickups.
Thank you. Further debate? Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just a question, actually. I note that the intent of this is to restrict truck movements during school drop-off pickup times. I just note the pickup time, though, from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Traditionally, I've seen school, those particular areas from 2:30 to 4 p.m. for those school zones, whereas this shows from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. I'm just wondering, is there a slight variation to school zones on Sheraton Road as there are with other schools that are slightly lower or slightly shorter between 2:30 and 4?
To the CEO.
Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, and through you, Mr Mayor. You're correct, the more standard time is, that's talking about the afternoon drop-off, is that 2:30 to 4. In this particular location it is 2 to 4. Most school zones only have one school operating within the school zone. This has actually got 4 different student-based campuses there, and that's why there's that extended time in terms of allowing for efficient pickup times in that afternoon drop-off. So it's an extended period compared to like one school that's only got the one set of pickup times.
Thank you. Further debate, councillors? There being none, we'll go back to Councillor Chowdhury for a right of reply.
I'm good, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion. Electronic voting is now open. I'll now close the voting. Motion carried unanimously. Item CCL 24/343, Renewable Energy Projects Update. Do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Ivey, seconded by Councillor Wright. Councillor Ivey, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just briefly, again, commending staff for putting this together. I think it's a first attempt. It'll be an evolving document. I think we will add to it as both not in just the number of projects, but the sort of information which we should collate for each project. I just think that that's going to be a very useful working document going forward, particularly when we get a number of these projects up and running, from a impact on the community, employment requirements for investment or spending of some of the community benefit funds that will flow through. Having a summary table is a good way just of introducing a bit of rigour and a bit of easily understood a summary of where we're up to with this transition to renewable. So I think it'll be a very useful document as we go forward.
Councillor Wright.
Just a question, in fact. It's a great report, and it does give a very nice, clean snapshot. And as Councillor Ivey said, it's going to continue to evolve. I'm just wondering if, and I think this is off the back of a motion brought to Council by Councillor Ivey a month or two ago, but is this something that maybe Councillor Ivey might see presented to Council maybe on a 6-monthly basis, so we can continue to get a bit of an update on where these projects are at?
Councillor Ivey, you can answer that if you wish.
I'll probably pass that back through to the CEO. I don't know that we actually did determine when it should be presented to council, but it certainly want to be half yearly. It would certainly probably be quarterly, and it would be, I would hope, updated as and when new information came in. But perhaps through to the CEO.
Through to the CEO for further clarity on that.
So we had to provide the report to this council meeting, was the notice of motion. We would be updating it generally, so I haven't got the minutes in front of you, but was determined. Was there a frequency, Mr Jennings?
Quarterly, Mr.
Quarterly.
CEO.
So there's already a quarterly from the notice of motion, so we'll be updating this quarterly and bringing that back to councillors.
Thank you. Any further debate, councillors? Councillor Butler.
Yep. Yes, thank you for that again. So a long list of renewable energy projects. I guess my question would be, obviously these projects are in various states of, like it mentioned there, there's preliminaries and EIS, and then there's approvals and construction, and they're all different stages of whatever. And so I appreciate that a lot of work has been done, and all that sort of thing. And so I guess my question is, are we able to stop some of these projects from henceforth? And the reason I do ask that is because I'm very concerned that these projects are, in the long run, actually quite damaging to the environment. Just to give one example, a 1 gigawatt farm, particularly say wind, may save 10 million tonnes of carbon dioxide emissions over a 20-year life, but it actually costs 10 million tonnes of carbon dioxide to produce it. And so it doesn't really have a carbon dioxide, how would you call it, benefit. So my concerns is that in going to the future, the fans, for instance, degrade, spreading fibres over the landscape. This could degrade our landscape. The land under the solar panels degrades as it's not unable to be, how would you say, fertilised and sprayed properly, as in normal agricultural practice. So in terms of future generations, I think we need to look after them, that we don't hand them an agricultural disaster, shall we say. And the other thing, of course, is the expense with anything to do, if you look at trending worldwide, Denmark, Germany, etc., highest electricity rates in the world, corresponding to the amount of renewables. So my concern is for future generations and for our environment, and also that the carbon dioxide that they're supposedly saving isn't being saved. In fact, I would argue that more is being used. So I guess my question is there any way that we could, obviously we've got what we've got and we've got contracts signed and these things obviously have to go forward, but can we look at stopping future ones, please? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any further debate, councillors? Councillor Dickerson.
I know that was a question from Councillor Butler, and I'm not sure if any of the staff are going to answer that, but I'm happy to put my 2 bits worth in, because I don't agree with the figures that Councillor Butler's used there in terms of the amount of CO2 that might be used in creating some of these wind farms and then the amount of CO2 that's saved. Obviously, we're not the consent authority. That's the important thing to know here, that we aren't giving approvals to this range of renewables here, but I still think we need to make sure that our community is given correct information, and the numbers that I would have around a 1 gigawatt solar farm would be closer to maybe 350 to 400,000 tonnes of CO2 in the production of the solar farm, but around 25 to 30 million tonnes of CO2 saved over, say, a 20-year time frame. But obviously those wind farms might go for much longer than that. So I think the community, the net benefit to the community is incredible, and the fact that we are right in the heart of the Central West Orana Renewable Energy Zone, I think we can make a huge contribution to our electricity economy, but also make a huge contribution to our economy with the number of these projects. So staying up to date to these, I think, is very important. But again, it's important to note that we're not the consent authority. We don't get to say yes or no. Our job is really to support these, because they can make a significant financial difference to our community and also make a significant environmental advantage to the overall environment that we live in this area and across the entire planet. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further debate, councillors? We'll go back to Councillor Ivey for a right of reply to anything there.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. I'll now put that motion. Electronic voting is open. I'll now close the voting. Carried 8 votes to 1. The next item is item CCL 24/344, Draft Development Control Plan DCP 24-001, Tiger Moth Circuit, 38 High Street, Dubbo. Councillors, do I have someone to move that motion there? Councillor Chowdhury, seconded by Councillor Cowley. Thank you. Councillor Chowdhury, would you like to speak to that motion?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further debate, councillors? Councillor Cowley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfamiliar as I am with, or becoming more familiar, I'm hoping, with the terminology of a development control plan, I just note that under the built form performance criteria, in accordance with the general terms of approval of Heritage New South Wales, the following types of development are not encouraged: dual occupancy, secondary dwelling, childcare centre, etc. That word the words not encouraged, that seems a little vague to me. Is that the kind of language that would normally be used in these instances?
To the CEO.
Through to Mr. Jennings.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in respect of the draft development control plan, the wording there in section A 1.1 is actually come from the New South Wales Heritage Office. In respect of the permissibility of development, that's guided by the local environmental plan, the Dubbo Regional Local Environmental Plan, for the whole local government area. The role of a development control plan is to guide development. It can't actually prohibit a development from happening. It's really to guide and put the parameters around how the development can happen.
Thank you, Councillor Cowley.
Thank you very much for that explanation, and thank you also for explaining that in terms of roof pitch and materials used, that wind spray is the recommended colour of the colour bond, and that is a grey colour. I just a comment along the lines of it being slightly counterintuitive in terms of us pushing for lighter coloured roofs, but again, it's a Heritage New South Wales directive, I would imagine.
Thank you. What was that to the CEO? Question? No, it is. Yeah, I'll answer it. It is a directive from Heritage Overriding Council. Any further debate, councillors? There being none, we'll go back to the mover, Councillor Chowdhury, for right of reply.
I'm good, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, I now put that motion. Please cast your votes. I'll now close the voting. Carried unanimously. Item CCL 24/345, amendments to the Renewable Energy Benefit Framework. Do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Dickerson, seconded by Councillor Ivey. Flinched first. Councillor Dickerson, would you like to speak to that motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is something we have been talking to the state government about for some time, getting some direction, getting some process in place from the state government where they will be making, they will be forcing, they will be making sure that proponents have a set amount of money to pay for each of these developments. In the past, one of my great frustrations has been that they've been voluntary planning agreements, and I hate the V part of a VPA because that means they're voluntary. Our staff have done a wonderful job in negotiating with many of these proponents to make sure they are paying what's a fair and reasonable, and you can even argue maybe it's still not fair and reasonable, but at least paying a certain amount. Having some guidelines from the state government where they say we need to pay, or proponents need to pay a certain amount of money, whether it's perfect, whether it's quite as much as we would have gotten out of each of those proponents is debatable. Over a long term, we're probably going to get more. Over a short term, maybe a bit less. But the main thing is, with about 37 projects in this res, there's a huge amount of work for our staff to negotiate with each one of those, and they might be multiple negotiations, then brought back to council, then some more negotiations, a lot of time and effort, and then the proponent can still say at the end of all that process, no. So having these guidelines from the state government, we have talked to the federal government and the state government to get some guidelines in place. So it's fantastic to see the state government has got some guidelines there. We can say no to them, but I think we'd be on a very thin ice if we did say no to this, because the proponents would say, here are the guidelines in place by the state government. They are the consent authority. Therefore, we should go along those lines. And hopefully the proponents are very nice in the way they go through this process and are happy to hand over these funds without the long negotiations we've had in the past. So well done to the state government. I think it's a move much needed, and I'm probably seeing some relief from the face of some of our staff to make sure they can take away the intense negotiations they've had to do in the past and then be able to say, here are the guidelines by the state government. So I think this is a fantastic move forward, and we are at the beginning of the whole process with reses, so we are breaking new ground with many of these. So we are the guinea pig in a lot of cases, and in this case, I think we've shown quite clearly that we've done a good job so far, but the state government needed to step in, which they have done.
Further debate, councillors. Councillor Ivey.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. I note that the state government has issued the requirements for solar and wind and battery storage. We've got in the area proposed pumped hydro scheme, which is a major project. I think $1.7 billion. Perhaps a question through to the CEO. Is it likely that the state government will introduce some mandatory requirement there, or is it still up? Is it still up for negotiations, or what is the status of that community benefit fund that may flow from a pumped hydro scheme?
The CEO.
It's not on the agenda to have a compulsory figure per megawatt hour for a pumped hydro. I think because they're more akin to a mining project or a traditional power plant, so they have a different scale. So it would be difficult to apply megawatt hour, is my understanding. But that they call out that there should be a community benefit fund. I'll throw to Mr. Jennings for more detail in that regard.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so in that respect, we have been in some early negotiations with the Phoenix Pumped Hydro development, and there is definitely a willing there to enter into a voluntary planning agreement with council. We haven't fully arrived at the figure yet to bring back to council, but it's something that we will be bringing forward in the new year as well. My last conversation with that proponent was last Friday, so it's fairly it's a live matter for consideration.
Thank you. Further debate, councillors? Councillor Butler.
Yes, thank you again. So I actually think we're not squeezing the lemon hard enough in this case. Thanks for your expression. Thank you, CEO, for the expression. I think, obviously, I'm not a supporter of green energies and all that. I believe they're actually going to lead to a disastrous outcome. But if we are forced in many ways to accept this, then we really do need to squeeze the lemon as hard as we can. Now, of course, from my point of view, if we put up a very large financial incentive to get us to agree to their res, and they don't accept it, well, for me that's fine. But on the other side, if they do accept it, then more the better for us. We have more money, right? So I'd suggest that my concern is the billions of dollars running through these projects, and I feel that we're getting almost beads to the natives. That it's just very much trinkets that they're offering us. Maybe a few mil here, a few 100,000 there, and I'd like to suggest that we should go above these limits that they've set us, and I feel that they could give a lot more than they currently do, and I really think that they're under, considering the long-term damage they're doing to our agricultural land and the cost of rejuvenation of that land, after the 20-year period or whatever it takes, we're really, I think, doing ourselves a disservice. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to the CEO.
So this, the draft policy that was proposed by Planning Department, this goes back 2.5 years ago, I think, was much lower. So councils got together and pushed hard to get it where it is. So I don't think there will be wriggle room from planning. And I guess I'd caution expectations that we could squeeze more out of both the planning system and also individual proponents. Well, to provide clarity, this is just to do with voluntary planning agreements, where we have had good success as well for additional investment in our communities at the DA stage. And I would congratulate, and it's typically in Mr. Ryan's area, where we have got significant investment, and I'll use 12 Mile Lane. It's a road. Yes, they need a good road access, but previously there has not been a good commitment to upgrading a road to cope with the traffic, and we are in a much better place. I'm going to use the phrase of I won't use the number because it's public, but I do have an idea I can talk about later. But it's a multi-million-dollar investment in a roadway, 12 Mile Lane, that will last for. It's more than what we could ever build that road for. So where we have other opportunities to squeeze the lemon, to coin a phrase, we do take advantage of that as well. So what we're talking about here is just the voluntary planning agreement. There's other avenues by which we are seeking to get long-term advantage for our communities as well.
Thank you. Further debate, councillors. Councillor Toynton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Butler. If we go to page 130 of the business papers, the table under part 3, the New South Wales guideline rate for the Spices Creek wind farm is $22 million. Our current framework's $30 million, so the difference is negative $7.95 million. That loss is repeated through each of these projects. I too would like to see a better deal out of renewable projects than what's currently on the table. Is there a way that we could ask them for more, or is this set in stone that the government says you may only ask for this and that's all you're entitled to?
To the CEO.
So in terms of the VPAs, they've got a guideline which they haven't had existing before. So, and I will throw to Mr. Jennings shortly for some clarification on the timelines that relate to those tables. So a bit like I alluded to then, we can ask for other things outside of a planning agreement framework, and I'll use the public-private partnership we achieved with Squadron Energy to get advanced wastewater treatment. In effect, a $3.6 million donation to a capability in Dubbo that will be a very effective drought resilience tool for our water supply. So there is other means by which we can get that value, but I'll just for that clarity on the table, I will throw to Mr. Jennings to talk about the analysis we've done on, yes, if you look at it just over a certain period, we would be behind, but there's other ways of looking at it. Mr. Jennings.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Mr. CEO. The table there is based on the fact that the projects there have a certain lifetime in respect of the planning agreement, so 20 and 30 years in case of the Spices Creek wind farm. With the changing policy setting with the guideline from the state government, they're going to basically a storage type mechanism, and that's basically in perpetuity for the lifetime of the project. So at the end of a 20-year voluntary planning agreement, the theory would be that those payments stop and then we wouldn't get anything for a project like that. But with the new policy setting there from the government, that will continue in perpetuity if we strike a new VPA in accordance with the guidelines as presented.
Thank you. Any further debate, councillors? There being none, we'll go back to the mover, Councillor Dickerson, for right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is disappointing to hear Councillor Butler say he's not a supporter of green energies, because I think there is the possibility that the renewable energy zone around Wellington will fundamentally change the economy of Wellington. Once in a multi-lifetime, multi-generational opportunity to change the economy of Wellington. And obviously, Councillor Butler being a part of the Wellington community, I think it's important that he's supportive and we're supportive of green energies with the difference that will make. It's not simply a matter of saying we want more money and if you don't pay that, you can't go ahead. Again, we're not the consent authority. Asking for more money probably will result in a worse outcome for us, again, when these guidelines are in place. Certainly hear what Councillor Toynton has said about the figures there, but again, as Mr. Jennings has explained, I think it's better to keep going while the project is still running. And I've often joked before that I'd hate to be a councillor on this council in 20 years' time when all of these VPA money suddenly drop off a cliff and then you've got to make do with a budget with significant fewer dollars in the bank. This would actually be better for those councils in 20 years' time, better for the community in 20 years' time. As these projects keep ticking away, the money keeps ticking in. So if we saw those same figures, Councillor Toynton, over a 30, 40, 50-year time frame, they would be significantly in favour of this particular framework. So I can't commend this enough to councillors. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillors, I'll now open the voting on that motion. Please cast your votes. Councillors, I'll now close the voting. Carried 7 votes to 2. The next item is item CCL 24/346, Dubbo Regional Sports Council Playing Field Improvement Fund. Do I have someone to move that motion on the Councillor Wright? Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Cowley. Thank you. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's just great we're able to support some of these smaller initiatives by some of these sporting organisations. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any further debate, councillors? Councillor Cowley.
Yeah, and just to comment, I think this is a wonderful example of how the Sports Council has been so effective over the past decades, and I'm just hoping that the soon-to-be-established Dubbo Regional Arts Council will be just as effective and valuable for our community.
Any further debate? There being none, Councillor Wright, would you like a right of reply?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Did have Ms. Cowley. Thanks.
Councillors, I'll now put the motion. Electronic voting is now open. Councillors, I'll close the voting. Carried unanimously. The next item is item CCL 24/347, 2024 Sister City Student Exchange Visit by Dubbo students to Minakamo. Do I have someone to move the motion that the report be noted? Councillor Wright, thank you. and Councillor Chowdhury to second. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, well done to the three speakers tonight. I must say that they've had an amazing experience in Minakamo and in Japan all up. Look, I was fortunate enough to be able to go over last year, or this year. Gosh, it was this year. I'd love to go again soon. But likewise, the experience that I had was, I could echo and use the same descriptive words that those three speakers used tonight with respect to the level of friendliness and how warm and welcoming and respectful and even gentle and those people are in Japan. So certainly well done. And anyone who's looking to maybe take advantage of any of these future exchange programs, certainly look into it. Be an amazing experience for you if you get an opportunity. So.
Thank you. Councillor Cowley.
Again, just a further comment, I think we hear a lot about the youth and the young people of today and how concerned we are about youth behaviour, but the calibre of young people that we saw tonight and the calibre of the young people we have in our community that we don't necessarily hear too much about, I think we're in good hands, and congratulations to those who spoke tonight, but congratulations to all our young people who step up and take part in these sorts of programs.
Councillor Ivey.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just again, a couple of questions, if I can. 10 students went this year. What's the limitation to the numbers? Is it limited to 10? And the other, so that issue is what is the maximum number that we can take, they can send? And the other question is, I noticed that really they said there were only 11 applicants, and I would have thought it would be much more sought after than that. Does that mean it's not being promoted well enough amongst the schools, or is there something we can do a bit better there?
To the CEO.
I'll actually pass that to Ms. Moore.
Through you, Chair. The current allocation in the budget is for 10 students to travel, so that is the current number that we work on. And we are conscious and aware of the lower the number of applications than we would like. So we actually had a internal staff meeting today about ways that we can increase that. So that's extending the advertising period and attempting to do potentially ways that may engage with youth more to make them aware of the opportunity and work on increasing that number for next year.
Thank you. Any further debate, councillors? There being none, we'll go back to the mover. Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. No comment.
Thank you. Councillors, we'll now put that motion. Electronic voting is open. I'll now close the voting. Carried unanimously. Item CCL 24/348, determination of ordinary council meeting to be held 21 January 2025. Do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Ivey, seconded by Councillor Chowdhury. Thank you. Councillor Ivey, would you like to speak to your motion?
Only to the extent, Mr. Mayor, that the meeting is necessary, as I understand it, to approve and a resolution to accept versus various motions that might be put up, and therefore it is required, and I would be quite in favour of supporting the motion.
Thank you. So just to clarify, it's that an ordinary meeting be held on Tuesday, 21 January 2025 for the purposes of determining various tenders and development applications and associated matters. Any further debate? No. Councillors, I will now put that motion. Please cast your votes. I'll now close the voting. Carried unanimously. Item CCL 24/349, Macquarie Foreshore Events Precinct and Old Dubbo Jail Heritage Plaza additional funding requirements. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'll moving the option 1. That council allocate an additional 2.3 million to the event precinct and 1.24 million to the Heritage Plaza for asset renewal reserve in order to complete both projects.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Dickerson. Councillor Chowdhury, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this we've been working this 3 project actually last few years, and now we come up again with this 2 for this additional fund, and we keep saying to the community we're going to deliver this project to the community. Now we are just holding like we are in the middle now. We're gonna moving ahead or not. But I think if we're not taking decision today, we're not going ahead this two project, then what's gonna happen in future? Again, this project will be come back, and council need to look for the additional funding from the funding bodies, and this project gonna cost more to the future. So I think we should go ahead and complete this to both projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further debate, councillors? Councillor Dickerson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As Councillor Chowdhury said, this is something that's been promised to the community for a long time. It was back in the 2017-2021 term of council that council was incredibly successful in obtaining a grant for 3 projects. That was the Macquarie Foreshore Events Precinct, that was the Old Aboriginal Heritage Plaza, and the Wiradjuri Cultural Tourism Centre. And that was many years ago, and the community had an expectation that those 3 projects were going to be delivered, and funds were received from the state government at the time to deliver those projects. We've come a long way forward. Those projects have grown in size. Those projects have grown in cost. As we know, many costs have gone up, in particular during COVID times. We've been very successful, in particular with the Wiradjuri Cultural Tourism Centre, for example, to obtain the $7 odd million there for that funding from the federal government. We've obtained further funds from the state government for these projects, and there's been some very good shuffling around of those funds by our staff to get to the point where we are at now. We're at the point where the Wiradjuri Cultural Tourism Centre will be delivered. We know there's a contribution of about $2.2 million from council to deliver that $15 million project, and I'm quite comfortable with that small contribution for a huge project. We know the Old Aboriginal Heritage Plaza will be going ahead, and we need to make sure we tie that area up there. It's been a green, a cricket pitch or a bowling green there for too long, and we need to make sure we get that. We've already paid for the artwork. It's sitting in a container ready to be installed. We need to make sure we go ahead with that. The events precinct is something that not only will be good for the community, but can also generate in the vicinity of $164,000 a year for council by events that are there. Now that's an estimation, of course. It could be more, it could be less, but there'll be money generated. But also the community, as we've come out of COVID, the community wants to get out. They've shown that they want to get out and partake in activities. And we know there are some activities that are held down behind the visitor centre. Some of those activities could be definitely undertaken at Ollie Robbins Oval. Having an events precinct there with the correct stage in those areas there would be fantastic for our CBD, fantastic for our community. One of the things that's particularly disappointing if we don't go ahead with the Macquarie Foreshore project is that we'll be foregoing approximately, and the number's not exact, but approximately $3.7 million from funding. And we worked so hard to get grants from state and federal government. It's particularly galling when we say, actually, we don't want that money. Thanks. We know you awarded that to us, and we know we take that money if we're going ahead. It's not in our bank account, but we know it's there ready for us. And then we're going to say no thanks. Now, I do worry about how hard we work to get funding, how hard we work to get grants, and then to say no thanks is a bit disappointing. And I understand why we might, because we want to be financially sensible, but also then I do worry about our potential reputational damage that we worked hard to get a grant, we got the grant, they accepted that, and then we said, actually, no, we're okay now, thanks, we couldn't afford to do it. There's obviously a $3.5 million cost from our perspective to go ahead with these projects, but I think that's an amount of money that we can find, and it's not something that we have to find in a budget in 1 year. We can borrow it internally, so the next 10 years, the next 20 years if we want, can pay off that as the community uses that. In fact, if you paid off that money over a 20-year time frame internally, then the money we generate from that would more than actually generate the amount that we need to borrow for that money. So it's actually not a net loss to the council if we go forward with that. I think we've been promising this for a long time. I think all 3 projects need to go ahead, and they can go ahead. We need $3.5 million from this council to do that, and I think we can support that and make this a much better community on the basis of that. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Further debate, councillors. Councillor Butler.
Yes. So I'd just like to say that I don't feel that we're losing these millions of dollars. I think that's just a reallocation. So I don't see that as a relevant point. The damage that has been alleged, I don't think will necessarily be there. I think people understand that we've had cost blowouts. Materials went up unexpectedly. We had the board had to be, instead of putting it on the back of the building, we have to build footings. We had, and the list goes on, the heritage things, the diggings, whatever. So I don't think it will do reputational damage. I think that's not necessarily true. And as for $164,000 a year, that's a lot to stack up against a $2.3 million investment. It's a very slow rate of return. So I don't think that we necessarily need to go for option one. I think option two would be a far more fiscally sensible decision for our council, especially when it's trying to spend money we don't necessarily have. And I'm sure that there'd be other projects that are equally worthy. So thank you.
Thank you. Further debate, Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, I'm going to vote against this one too. Unfortunately, call me frugal. There's three fantastic projects here that I'd absolutely love to see all three of them completed at some point in time. And look, and staff do an amazing job of these grant applications and work very hard to source ways to raise funds through these through grants to complete projects, and my understanding is that the Macquarie Foreshore project will be a shovel-ready project, which will be relatively attractive for a future grant funding program. I have some concerns initially as well with respect to the that reputational damage of supposedly handing some money back. It's just seen of late that the state government are more than happy to get their hands back on some grant money that that they seem to have handed out. So I'm not sure if that'll be too much of an issue. We might get a pat on the back to hand that money back. Asset depreciation is probably another one I'm concerned about as well. Look, this is another substantial asset that'll be on our books, and whilst Councillor Dickinson made some comments of some income we generate as a result of that particular item, being available to the community to rent back or for different organisations to utilise. Asset depreciation is something which is massive. About 30% of the income that comes into council gets allocated to depreciation, so that worries me as well. The other thing that does concern me as well is the Wiradjuri project, and as Councillor Dickinson alluded, there's about $2.19 million that council's allocated to that just through an internal loan. Look, that's been committed to. It's been just on 12 months now since council had made that resolution to proceed with that, and we're still a while away before we see a sod turned on that one, and I just have some concerns that whilst we might be able to pull back on what's delivered as part of that Wiradjuri project, that 2.19 may not be sufficient for the job to be completed to a satisfactory manner, and more money may need to be thrown at it from council coffers. So on the basis of those couple of points, unfortunately I can't vote against this, and I'd support those comments from Councillor Butler with respect to maybe the alternative option as opposed to this one. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Toynton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've got 2 speakers for and 2 against. To move the motion be put.
That the motion be put. Seconder for that, Councillor Butler. All those in favour of that, we'll do it by show of hands. The motion be put. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Councillor Ryan. All those against. Councillor Wright, were you for? Yep, 4. That's carried 7 votes to 2. Councillors, we now put that. Councillor Chowdhury, right of reply to anything?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, because I try to push for this project because I've been witness of all these community groups. They're looking for this event precinct, and I've been seeing how they've been could not use a Victoria Park, and they've been promised in future within few years they can use this event precinct. Now it's gonna go for shade. That's a shame. And also I'd just like to make a comment about Councillor Wright about depreciation. So any capital project will delivered by this council will be depreciation will be normal accounting method. So with that afraid of depreciation, I don't think we're gonna hold in all future big project. So we need to consider. And also Councillor Butler has mentioned that reallocation of 3.7 million actually is not 3.7 reallocation is for the 3.7 million would be the funding we received, and we're gonna now walk away from this funding. Thank you.
Councillors, I will now put Councillor Chowdhury's motion. Councillor Butler.
Just a clarification. The way I've got it written here is that
Right,
council
hang on,
allocate
point-
or. So
So
could I
that's a
just
calling
could
a
I
point of order.
motion that the
Hang on,
council?
sorry. So, are you going to call a point of order?
No, a point of clarification.
Oh, right.
I just not
Point-
understanding.
Yep.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Dickerson.
Right of reply has been given to the mover of the original motion, and there's no more debate after that.
No more
it's
debate
not a
after that.
debate.
But no.
Oh,
But
sorry.
there will be if this gets defeated, then there will be an opportunity to move another motion because we won't have a motion on the books.
Sorry, I'm just confused because
No, it's all right.
I don't know
There
what
was-
I'm voting for here.
So this is for or against Councillor Chowdhury's motion, which is
Which
that
was-
council allocate an additional 2.3 million to the events precinct option 1, 1.4 to the Heritage Plaza from asset renewal reserves in order to complete both projects. So if that gets defeated, then there's no motion on the books, and then someone will have to move another motion. Councillors, I will open the voting on Councillor Chowdhury's motion. Council, we now don't have a motion on the books. Would someone like to move option 2 that's there? Councillor Butler.
Can I move that the council submit a request for Infrastructure New South Wales? For
Yeah,
scope-
just stand up
Oh,
while you're doing it.
That, to move that the council submit a request to Infrastructure New South Wales for a scope change, or can I just say as read, or should I just say?
Except for in the third point, the CEO will just give us a little update there in the wording.
So you can move 1, 2, 3, except we need to adjust 3 because, as I advised councillors in an email today, that we have just signed the deed. So we just need to say, notes that Wiradjuri Cultural Tourism Centre funding deed for growing regions has been signed. So that's the minor adjustment to what's in the business.
Okay.
You could even, you could cut 3 out completely. That was giving you advice at that time because of that project.
Yep.
Now it's been signed. You could actually not move 3 and just move 1 and 2.
Yep. All right. So
1 and 2. Yeah, can you read 1 and 2, please,
Yes.
Councillor Butler?
Okay, so I'd like to move that 1, council submit a request to Infrastructure New South Wales for a scope change, transitioning the events precinct to a tender-ready project. Number 2, that council seek approval from Infrastructure New South Wales for a budget reallocation of the Restart New South Wales grant to fund the Heritage Plaza.
Thank you. A seconder, Councillor Toynton. Councillor Butler, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah. I think we've already, to some extent, discussed a lot of this in the previous defeated motion, so I think I should be okay. All right.
Thank you. Further debate, councillors? Councillor Dickerson.
Just a question, please, Mr. Mayor. The point 1 talks about a shovel-ready project, which is fantastic. Let's have it a shovel-ready project. Do we know of any grant programs that are available there at the moment that we could possibly apply for in terms of this particular project? Any ones that are coming up? Any ones that we could actually submit this to? Because it is ready to go. Obviously, we've got tenders that have already gone out, so it is definitely ready to go.
To the CEO.
Yes, both at the state and federal level. So at state, there's just been a regional development program been announced. So that is an opportunity there. There's the rolling, it's an unusual program at the federal level where they don't have end dates. They just hoover up applications submitted at a certain point in time and assess them, and then others go in. So there's a rolling pipeline under the growing regions program off the top of my head. So there are valuable projects. Infrastructure New South Wales was the officer we were talking to endorsed that approach, that it is very ready to go. So yes, I'd imagine there will be future opportunities because there are some out already, and there'll be a federal election, there'll be a rebadge of a program, so there will be some programs coming up in the short term.
Further debate, Councillor Ivey.
Again, Mr. Mayor, just a question, which I don't know whether they'll be able to provide the answer to. Number 2 says that the council seek approval from Infrastructure New South Wales for a budget reallocation. Have we got any indication, or we can say publicly whether that approval is likely to be given, or can't we say?
To the CEO.
No, we had quite happy to say openly that we had it's a verbal discussion at this point with the relevant officer in Infrastructure New South Wales. I will say that she was quite pleased that we actually proactively reached out to explain the difficulty had. You may recall, councillors, that we had the tender result, and you resolved that we go away and talk to Infrastructure New South Wales. So it was received very positively, but we need that formal application now to work it through the system should council make this decision.
Further debate? There being none, Councillor Butler, was there anything to reply to there? There might have been.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, I will now put the motion being points 1 and 2 as appear in the business papers in the second option. Councillors, I will now close the voting. Carried 7 votes to 2. The next item is CCL 24/350, Land Acquisition Dubbo Regional Livestock Markets, Lot 1, Deposited Plan 446390. Do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Toynton, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Chowdhury. Thank you. Councillor Toynton, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any debate, councillors? Councillor Chowdhury.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a just question. What is that land acquisition affecting? Is that affecting their any service level or?
To the CEO.
Thank you.
No, it's administrative tidy up. Basically, it's land that's been used for many, many years, decades, is part of the livestock markets. It's tidying up that formal ownership. It came to light when we redeveloped the intersection, what have you, and realigned the railway. So it is an administrative tidy up and is reflecting reality in practice.
Any further debate? Councillor Ivey.
Gee, again, just a question. If it's just an administrative tidy up, it's costing $70,000. Are we buying the land off Transport New South Wales or the New South Wales government? In which case, if it's being used for that purpose and they were party to it, why do they need to be paid for it? Can't we, in fact, request that that land be transferred at zero cost to council?
The CEO.
We are using someone else's land, to the short story, and I will say that we have compulsory acquisition of Transport for New South Wales land. They have compulsory acquisition of our land that they pay for as well. So typically agreements, gentlemen's agreements, shall we say, in the old-fashioned lingo, aren't looked favourably upon when you're interacting with an agency. So we need that land as part of our operation. They will, you have to negotiate, I hasten to add, for a compulsory acquisition, but that is the market price. So that could be what we end up paying in full.
Thank you. Further debate, Councillor Cowley.
May I ask why now?
To the CEO.
Because it's the right time. Like moving the railway line, it's a hangover from once we found that out, and during that project, this is a number of years ago. It is fixing up a legacy item. So we will have these from time to time right around the LGA, and this is just one of those matters. So it's just come to the fore now.
Further debate. There being none, we'll go back to Councillor Toynton. There are only questions, I think, were there?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm all good.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion. Councillors, electronic voting is open. I'll now close the voting. Carried unanimously. Item CCL 24/351, Proposed Master Plan and Lodgement of Planning Proposal Application for Keswick Estate. Do I have someone to move that motion, please? Councillor Toynton, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Wright. Thank you. Councillor Toynton, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any further debate, councillors? Councillor Chowdhury? Oh, sorry, Councillor Wright. Councillor Wright, you go.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Oh, look, I think this is a great initiative by council to just to review the minimum lot requirements there and increase a bit of density in that location. Obviously, there'll be some planning issues that'll come with that, which I'm sure will be addressed. But look, there's some great information in there that that talked a bit about demographics and different types of housing and that we saw from a 2016 census to a 2021 census. Must say, though, it surprised me that the average number of people per household was 2.5 back in 2016. It's still 2.5 now. I kind of thought that number might have reduced a little bit, but you will see in that table there, it does talk about the majority of dwellings being constructed have been 3 or 4 bedroom or 3 or 4 plus bedroom houses over that last sort of 5 or 6 years. So to assist the current market with smaller and alternative types of housing, certainly this will go quite well for potentially Ironbark Estate if this motion gets through. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chowdhury?
All good, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Wright can read my mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Toynton, a right of reply as the mover. Or anything said there?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. All good.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion. Electronic voting is now open. I'll close the voting. Carried unanimously. The next item is item CCL 24/352, Local Government Remuneration Tribunal and other submissions by Council. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Chowdhury, seconded by Councillor Cowley. Councillor Chowdhury, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other debate, councillors? Councillor Dickerson.
Not debate, Mr. Mayor. I do find it interesting, the inquiry into public toilets that the state government's running at the moment, and I'd commend our community to have a good read into the submission that our CEO has written in relation to that inquiry. It gives a detailed explanation of public toilets in relation to that particular inquiry. It also gives some pretty good background information on the 3D printed toilets over at Lions Park, West Dubbo. So some people are a bit confused about the controversy surrounding those. So I think the explanation put in the submission that the CEO made to that particular state government inquiry gives some excellent background information and some very detailed information for people that want to take the time and read that and get some of the facts associated with that. So well done to our CEO on that. Thank you.
Further debate, Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Echoing Councillor Dickerson's comments, actually, that is a very good report that the CEO has put forward to this particular item. So, and it does go into quite a lot of detail and the history and the reasoning as to why that toilet facility was actually constructed, and what's actually what communities gained from it since. The other one I'll comment on as well, just quickly, is the one where fees payable to councillors and mayors. Some of our new councillors wouldn't have experienced it yet, but we probably still will experience it at some stage soon, where councillors will be required to pass a motion to grant themselves a pay rise or otherwise, which is one of the biggest conflicts that I've ever come across in this role I've had as a councillor, but yet it's part and parcel for the process for councillors to decide their own remuneration. So I'd certainly like to see that responsibility passed up to Office of Local Government or somewhere up the chain, and not for councillors to sit here and determine what they should or shouldn't be paid or reimbursed for their duties. So, anyway, look forward to seeing what comes of those. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further debate? I'll just quickly say then that there was a good report, good submission there on the cats and how cats are sort of policed throughout could be policed throughout LGAs in New South Wales. And I don't understand why the Minister for Local Government doesn't change the wording of the Companion Animals Act to treat dogs and cats the same, where you can't just have a dog running around the countryside, but you can have a cat running around outside. So a contained cat is a healthy and happy cat. That'll do from me. Councillor, was there any other debate? Back to the mover, Councillor Chowdhury for right of reply. He's all good. Thank you very much for that, councillors. I will now put the motion, open the electronic voting. I'll now close the voting. Carried unanimously. The next item is CCL 24/353, Outstanding Actions from Council and Committees. We've got a choice here, I think. Did we? Councillor Chowdhury, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a number one, that the report from the governance team leader is be noted. Number two, the report of outstanding resolution be presented to council quarterly.
Thank you for that. A seconder, Councillor Wright. Thank you. Councillor Chowdhury, would you like to speak to that motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is quite good report. Sometimes we put like a lot of emotion and a lot of action. We can't remember what's happening. So quarterly, if that report comes and community can see what action been council and where we up to. I would like to, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to request to the staff to make it a little bit more clearer, more like a simple, because it look like a lot of information like on the table. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Further debate, councillors? Councillor Butler.
Yes, I just wanted to, more of a comment perhaps, on page 252. They've talked about their ordinary council meeting 23rd of May. that the Chief Executive Officer write to the owners of the Suntop Solar Farm, Cal Energy, and Wellington Solar Farm, Light Source, and the new owners, Beijing Energy International Australia. Maybe it's just a comment that I'm concerned that if these projects can be just built and then sold off to a foreign entity such as China. I find that concerning, that we could end up in a situation where our electricity is subject to a foreign entity. So that's all.
Thank you. The CEO might be able to clarify that.
So it's still going through the Financial Investment Review Board. It will have a high percentage of Australian ownership based on the model, but they do have to go through the FIRB, the Foreign Investment Review Board as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Further debate, councillors? There being none, back to Councillor Chowdhury for a right of reply. He's very good, thank you. Councillors, I'll put the motion. Electronic voting is open. Please cast your votes. I'll now close the voting. Carried unanimously. The next item is CCL 24/354, continuation of membership of associated local government organisations. Do I have a motion to be moved by Councillor Ivey, seconded by Councillor Chowdhury? Thank you. Councillor Ivey, would you like to speak to your motion?
Just to say, Mr. Mayor, that listing the organisations there that we do partake with has to be in the best interests of this council. We're not just an island. We are, we are an island in some respect, I guess, but we interact with other islands around us. And I think the more involvement and interplay of ideas that we have between those different islands can only be to our advantage. So I think just listing them out there as showing that we are involved with like organisations has got great advantages to this council.
Further debate? Councillor Dickerson.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor. I actually thought there was some fee associated with the Alliance of Western Councils. There was a secretariat employed by that, and I thought all the 12 councils in that actually contributed to that particular alliance to mainly cover off the cost of the secretariat.
To the CEO.
Yeah, there is a cost there. I'll chase that up. It's not a membership fee per se, but an agreed amount that we fund. So I'll get that back to councils out of session.
Further debate? Councillor Butler.
Again, yes, maybe I'm new to this game, but 92,000 sounds like a lot of money to be members of some organisations. Is that, how would you say, is that like, I guess, a standard cost for, let's say, like-sized businesses, corporations, for instance? I mean, obviously, local government's not a private corporate, but do private corporations invest that sort of money in subscriptions, as it were? Just
to the CEO,
perhaps?
I couldn't comment on private corporations. I'll just say that they're, like Country Mayors is a very large membership, if not the majority. You've actually had councils like Newcastle and Wollongong wanting to join because they're seeing it's effective. Regional Cities is a group of councils of similar size throughout New South Wales, and it's been very effective at lobbying for our particular interests. And that's because we share the same role as that hub that services a broader area. So we have lots of things in common. We can learn, we do learn off each other. Some of us, there'll be someone who's pushing new ground that we can pick up off as well. So they are quite effective. Probably the best one to call out there is that Regional Cities and getting funding for a freight pinch points program was actually called out in the New South Wales freight strategy as an ideal way of collaborating. So it does get us a voice at various high levels in government and funding. Regional Capitals Australia, similar to Regional Cities, but in the national context. So you do get exposed and learn from other similar communities around Australia as well. So can't comment on private sector. I'm sure they would spend more, to be honest. So they're relatively small for the influence you can have as a collective. So that's the power of them.
Thank you. Strength in numbers, access and lobbying is what it's all about. Any further debate, councillors? Councillor Ivey.
So again, just a question following on from Councillor Butler there. By far the biggest cost is that local government, New South Wales, is 62,000. Is an element of that compulsory, or is it discretionary at all?
The CEO.
Councils don't have, through you, Mr. Mayor, councils don't have to be a member, but you actually get much more for your dollar there. We get you free legal advice, free industrial relations advice. Councillors can ring them and get advice in terms of governance and questions. So it's much more than a membership body. It's not just about the lobbying. There's many more services that you get as well as a council, and indeed individual councillors.
Further debate? There being none, we'll go back to Councillor Ivey, as there might not have been anyone make any comments there.
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Question fest. Thank you. Councillors, I'll now put the motion. Please vote. I'll now close the voting. Carried unanimously. The next item is CCL 24/355, request for councillor representation District Liaison Committee. Councillor Chowdhury has a motion to move.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Number one, that the two councillor members of the District Liaison Committee would be Deputy Mayor Councillor Taunton and Councillor Chowdhury is myself. And number two, that the two councillor members and the Chief Executive Officer attend the District Liaison Committee meetings as per the service agreement with Rural Fire Service. Thank you.
A seconder, Councillor Taunton. Councillor Chowdhury, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just make a comment, like it is a great organization to be part of, and thank you, my fellow councillor, let me and Deputy Mayor to represent on behalf of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further debate, councillors? There being none, I'll open the voting. Please cast your vote. I'll now close the voting. Carried unanimously. Item CCL 24/356, comments and matters of urgency. This week we'll start with, on my left, Councillor Taunton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this will be our last meeting before Christmas. So if we don't see it, hopefully we don't have any extraordinaries between now and then. But if we don't see you between now and then, I wish every one of you all a very happy Christmas and the best for the holidays. To just drive safely on the roads and look forward to working with every one of you again in the new year. And hopefully we can really just give it a really good red hot crack, that anything that we can resolve will be in the best interest of our community. So wish you all the best for the holidays. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Butler.
Yes, I'll just reiterate, Merry Christmas, one and all. It's going to be a great holiday, no doubt. Yeah, and I just want us to remind us that Jesus is the reason for the season. So keep that in mind when you're celebrating. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ivey.
Just one example, or another example, Mr. Mayor, of the importance of community. I know I've banged on about this before, really. We are here for the community. Last Sunday, I went to the Stewarttown Children's Christmas Party. Started at 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. It was very well organised. I think they had about 50 kids there that each received an individualised present from Santa, who arrived on the fire truck. That Stewarttown community is unbelievable, actually, how they come together. I don't know the exact arrangements. I think each kid had to contribute $10. The association there contributed another $20, so the presents that the kids got were around about $30, as I understand it. And look, the way it was organised, the joy on the kids' faces, the camaraderie, the interaction, it's what communities are about, and it was just fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cowley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that I did with my spare time this week, and it's only Tuesday, was a survey understanding loneliness amongst rural women and girls. And I'm very fortunate to not feel lonely. I feel very connected to my community, my family and my friends. But this survey was conducted by the Rural Women's Network as a submission to the inquiry currently underway in the New South Wales Parliament, which is conducting its first ever inquiry into loneliness. And I think the fact that there needs to be an inquiry into loneliness speaks volumes, particularly as we're coming up to the Christmas period. The public hearings that they've been holding to examine the the prevalence, the causes, and the impacts of loneliness in New South Wales, some of the results have been quite interesting and quite sad. One of the reports from the inquiry came from the KPMG Groundswell Foundation that estimates that every year there is, and this is billion with a B, $2.7 billion burden placed on the health system or healthcare system as a direct result of people feeling lonely. The network of alcohol and other drug agencies says stats show that around 40% of New South Wales residents report feeling lonely. So I do echo my fellow councillors' Christmas wishes for those who do celebrate the season, and not everybody in our community does. But I would like everybody to remember that this is not necessarily the most wonderful time of the year for everyone. So please spare a thought for those who will have somebody missing at a Christmas table this year. And for those who are struggling with financial hardship or health or mental illness, those who are separated from loved ones or friends or family, we can all do our little bit by being a little bit kinder, a little bit more tolerant. And if we can, not everybody is in a position to, but spare a few bob to donate to one of the many charities in our community that are helping people who are doing it tough this Christmas. And a shout out to all those wonderful agencies and not-for-profit organisations who are helping some of our most vulnerable. So happy Christmas to those who celebrate into this year. And yes, just be kind, and here's to 2025.
Thank you. Councillor Dickerson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was good to see some representation for people who want to use our wonderful theatre a little bit more, and there was some interesting information given there. 17th of April 2010, the theatre was open, and the only rate rise I've ever been associated with in my time on council was to build the theatre 2 years of 2.5% additional. So the community definitely paid for that theatre and owns that theatre. It feels very much like they own that theatre. We recently celebrated 1 million people through the theatre, but obviously we want to make sure that those community groups, as we heard tonight, can take advantage of that. And I'd love to see the staff working away. I know it's a challenge to see what ways we can do things with community groups to see how they can do some things in the theatre whilst making sure we maintain the safety and the use of the professional facilities we've got there. But I'd like to see us see how we can work with those various community groups to make sure those community groups are using that theatre as much as it possibly can be. It's great to have professional organisations come, and we have some wonderful professional groups come through, but it's also great to see those local organisations get to be on that theatre, on that stage, on that world-class stage there. We heard from the Japanese students or not Japanese students, Australian students that went across to Japan this year. I've just returned from Japan myself over the last week. I've been hosted by the Japanese Local Government Association, where it was an exploratory program to work on ways that we can share information. One of the things that we saw was in a place called Ube City, and in Ube City they've got an art bienniale. It's been running since 1961, and so I've got some little ideas that we might try and bring back to our community, and certainly they grilled me for ideas that we've got in terms of how we run our council and what things we might do differently. So thank you to the Japanese Local Government Association for hosting me over there for that week, and all the thoughts that Councillor Wright said before, that the people who went on that exchange program, it doesn't matter where you go in Japan, whether it's to Minakama, our sister city, whether it's in Tokyo, whether it's in Ube City, Japanese people are certainly very accommodating, very wonderful in what they do. Councillor Toynton did mention it, that we've hopefully not got another extraordinary meeting before Christmas. This is our third council meeting in the last 2 weeks, and I'm still intrigued by the extraordinary meeting we had last week. Maybe things will become clear to me at some point in time, but we had an extraordinary meeting to push forward a motion which nothing's come out of yet. I thought we could have done it at this particular meeting, but I'm waiting to hear further information, so I'm in the dark about that one a little bit, but I'll be intrigued to see, and so hopefully we'll see everyone back on the 21st of January. We probably don't need to see people back before then, but that means that in the meantime, as has been already mentioned, Merry Christmas to 57,298, all of our residents in the Dubbo Regional Council local government area. Merry Christmas to, of course, all of my fellow councillors, and of course the 717 staff that we've got here at Dubbo Regional Council. Merry Christmas to all those. Thank you for your wonderful work since I've been back on council since 2021. Continue that great work, enjoy Christmas time, and look forward to everyone rejuvenated and firing all cylinders for next year to have another wonderful year on council. Thank you.
Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just could not stress enough more for this sports hub. I would like to thank you, Mayor, my fellow councillor, and the staff, who proactively stand up and lobbying for this, keep lobbying for this $48 billion keeping within our region. As we know, we have a lot of issues within our region, and we keep pushing for that sports hub to be built in Dubbo. We don't want to say like any other location. So we keep raising our voice. We keep lobbying ourselves to keep their sports hub in Dubbo. Also, I'd like to thank you, my fellow councillors, and all the staffs and all the community members who celebrate Christmas. Merry Christmas to you all, and have a safe Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll echo the sentiments of all my other councillors as well, and wish everyone in the region a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and a safe New Year. One thing I do want to say, though, was for those people who are fortunate to have a few dollars in their pockets and they are going to go out and buy presents for their family or friends or loved ones, I know the temptation is to sit there on your computer or your phone and maybe order something online. I'd absolutely urge you to get out and go for a wander up in the street and walk into the shops in our local community and spend your money, hand your money over the counter. Look, that money obviously goes around in circles. It employs people who spend the money and in those other shops, and it just continues to go around our community. So get out of your office chair or get out of the lounge room chair and go out and spend some money in our community. I think it'd be very well appreciated by a lot of business owners this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Yeah, look, I think it'd be a bit rude if I didn't say something. Seems that the deputies set the standard there. Look, it's with Christmas coming up, obviously, a big thing that we say is it's not what's under the tree, it's who's around the tree. Celebrate your loved ones, do it in your time and do it the way you want to do it. I will just say I'm a size 10 in shoes. My favourite colour is blue. And I'm probably stretching a 2XL, but if anyone wants to get me something, yeah, happy days. Cheers.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Yes, Merry Christmas to everyone out there. I hope it's a great Christmas New Year period for people. I did go to the Geary Carols. The Lions Club put on the Carols last Friday night. That was great, and it was undercover, so when we got a heap of rain, it still worked very well, but great community out there. Dubbo Carols Sunday night, I saw Councillor Chowdhury doing some posts there, so I assume he was there. Couldn't see him in the crowd. There's that many people. I've had the chance to go to a couple of seniors' Christmas morning tea and luncheon in Wellington of late, and Councillor Toynton came to the lunch there, and what a fantastic seniors setup they have in Wellington. And I've been invited back for carpet bowls, so I'll have to find some old carpet bowls and have a practice over the Christmas New Year period so I don't get embarrassed when I'm there. And thanks to Councillor Toynton for going to the senior Christmas luncheon in Dubbo as I was getting organised for the PCYC Sports Hub extraordinary meeting. Now, there was 48.6 million reasons to have that extraordinary meeting as a way to really put the pressure on the state government not to make an announcement to possibly withdraw that funding from Dubbo, the biggest grant funder other than a bridge and a hospital. So thank you to the community that came out for that and the support that's been there, and I know that we're being heard in Sydney. Whether we'll get the result we want is yet to be seen, but we are being heard, and that really did focus the minds of the decision makers in Sydney. And I'd just like to finish with, I went the other day, I was invited to 79 Bolt Street. The Dubbo RSL sub-branch has a veterans house there, and there was Tom Gray, Sean Graham, Bill Greenwood and a few other blokes there showing me around the house. They've got a great setup where veterans from anywhere can drop in when they're in Dubbo. If they're here for medical appointments, they can call into the house if they need someone to talk to. They were there helping a widow whose husband, who I know had recently died, and he'd been in the armed forces previously, helping her get all her paperwork and affairs and things like that in train. And you can sit there and you can talk to a psychologist in Sydney one-on-one in the room that they've set up over the AVL. So That is all funded by their own little club there and donations, and it's a really good setup for a really good cause. So any veterans out there that hear this, and I'll give it a shout out on the radio the next couple of days, that might not know about it, it's a great place to call into and get some support when needed. Thank you. Confidential items at the next section. Under Section 10A of the Local Government Act, the next items being CCL 24/357, 358, 359, 360, 361 have been identified as likely to be discussed in a closed session. Can I now have someone move us into confidential session to deal with the confidential items? Moved by Councillor Ryan, seconded by Councillor Chowdhury. We have no applications from members of the public to make their representations regarding whether the meeting should be closed to the public, and there's no members in the public gallery. So I will put the motion, councillors. I'll open the electronic voting to vote to go into confidential session. I'll now close the voting. Carried unanimously. I declare the motion carried unanimously, and we will now move into closed session, the time being 7:35 p.m. Please start the web streaming. The council has returned to open session at 7:50 p.m. Welcome back. Please refer to the following slides for the resolutions from the closed session of council. There are no further items for consideration of the ordinary council meeting, and I declare the meeting closed, the time being 7:51 p.m. The web streaming